Hello, guys, and thank you once again for joining me on Indiana Sports Connection. I am your residential anchor, Aaron. Thank you so much for being here and being part of this Indiana Hoosiers community. So today we have a lot to talk about. This is a live stream edition. So I'm working on a schedule that I can get like 3 videos out a week and then do a live stream on Friday. And let me know if that works for you, because that's what I'm planning on doing. That is what seems to be working, because we get a lot of things to be said in videos like after the weekend's over with, and then we have a lot of lead up. But so happy that you are here today. This episode is brought to you by BetUS. Use my promo code Indiana125 in the link in the description down below and save 125% on your first 3 deposits. Thank you so much to BetUS for sponsoring this video. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button down below. Thank you for being here. Hit that thumbs up button and hit that bell notification. So every time I go live like this, you will get a video. Most of my videos are edited. Today, what we have to talk about, Curt Cignetti, his contract. Now, I've heard a lot of rumblings about the contract, about him. It's not really been inked yet. I mean, I've heard a lot of just chatter about it. We're going to read an article of what Scott Dolson said, because look, at the Michigan game, there were people just screaming at Scott Dolson, sign Cignetti, and he's got to get it done. I'll tell you what I think about what he said so far, and could there be a possibility he could leave or something like that? I mean, there definitely could be. I mean, money talks, and people listen. That's a lot of why people, you work really hard in life, and somebody like Cignetti, somebody could come along with a big bag of cash. And I think that's all of our biggest fears. We'll talk about the college football playoff. Indiana getting disrespected by a lot of different places. And I'll show you some clips from CBS Sports where they did not have Indiana in, and what they're saying Indiana has to do against Ohio State to stay in the college football playoff. And then we will talk about South Carolina tomorrow at 3:00. We got South Carolina, and I'm telling you, this is going to be a tough game, because they have got to like right now he's ranked 15th of all of the coaches in the Big Ten. So I don't know who's below him. Rutgers. I don't know what teams are below him. Rutgers, Minnesota, I'm guessing. And so Cignetti, he's got a big payday coming in this article. And you know what? We'll just pull this article up right now and we will read this. This is kind of a new part of my format here. All right, let's get to the beginning of this article. All right. IU looking to keep Curt Cignetti, improve facilities, ensure that 2024 isn't a one-hit wonder. This is the article I got into here. And so Curt Cignetti has said regularly since he was hired that Indiana's clear financial commitment to football was a major factor in his decision to accept the head coaching position in Bloomington. A year into his tenure, 10 wins later, Indiana's ability to financially support football at an elite level is set to be tested again. And look, I mean, this is one part of this, like, say he comes in and he's like 7-3. I mean, it's not all the hoopla, but with Indiana being undefeated and going into the college football playoff, he has set himself up for a big payday, and he's going to get that payday because SEC schools will pay. I mean, here's what really comes to mind to me. It was like a few years ago, there was like, I think it was Texas A&M paid like Jimbo Fisher like some absurd amount of money just to go away. It was like $70 million or something just to go away. And they got to hire a new coach, but they paid him like some crazy amount just to be like, yeah, we're going to buy your contract out. I mean, that's what Indiana does. Like, they'll do that for basketball players, but in the Big Ten, you just don't see as much money getting thrown around the coaching. A near lock for National Coach of the Year, Cignetti is the hottest name on the coaching carousel, both at the college level and even in the NFL. It goes without saying, Cignetti is a wanted man. And it seems rather obvious to point out that IU has been working behind the scenes to make sure that he stays in Bloomington long term. So they've been working behind the scenes. I've not seen anywhere where this is when this is going to get inked because, when he signs the contract officially, under a contract that pays him a base salary of $4.25 million, Cignetti has already earned $600,000 in bonuses this season, so that's good. He's had incentives, a one-year contract extension, and a $250,000 raise that begins next season. But he's proven to be a steal at that rate, currently ranking 15th among Big Ten coaches in salary. The coaches Cignetti is competing with for the Big Ten title, Ohio State's Ryan Day, Penn State's James Franklin, and Oregon's Dan Lanning, all make $8 to $10 million per year range. So Nick Hildebrand, you're right on with that 8 to 10. He's got to be in that Ryan Day range, that top level range. I mean, and I'd want to really shoot on, on the high side. Even though you don't want to do that. I mean, I am in sales and I gotta be like a negotiator on this stuff. I mean, you don't want to pay too much, you don't want to pay too little. All right, IU AD Scott Dolson says that Indiana is going to do everything it can to lock up Cignetti for the foreseeable future. This isn't a one-hit wonder, Dolson said, of keeping Cignetti on the Hoosiers. He said that on the Hoosiers Connect podcast when President Pam Whitten supported making certain made certain that we made a commitment to football. It's a long-term commitment. We want to make certain that we can compete, sustain success, and be a proud member of the Big Ten, the best football conference in the country. We're committed to continuing to invest the resources in our program to keep things going. We know that helps to sustain the entire department. That does help to sustain the entire department. From being at the game last weekend, one thing football is, it is a revenue machine. Not only do you have more tailgating for parking, you sell more parking passes, more people come into town. It's more of like a communal event where restaurants get more business. Basketball games that are on Tuesday nights or Saturday afternoons or those types of things, there's not near the amount of tailgating and festivities, and just overall, there's just not the overall draw where, like this year, we had 8 home football games. The amount of money that Indiana University, I mean, they've probably more than I would like to see their statements. I mean, I bet they've more than quadrupled what they made last year. Because last year, I mean, you could get a ticket for $10 to $20 and you could park your car for $10 to $20. Now you're talking like $300 some dollars I paid for a Michigan ticket and $300 some dollars for a tailgating parking ticket. Just that right there, just tickets, and that not even counting the concession sales, the amount of merchandise you're selling. I myself have bought 3 Indiana football shirts this year and maybe I've only owned 2 in my entire life. Keeping Cignetti might also entail a commitment by Indiana to enhance the 64-year-old Memorial Stadium. And that is evident that a lot of the things there need to be upgraded. All right, I'm going to go to this next slide. We need to have a vision for Memorial Stadium, and that is evident. And whether they need to really repair the press box there and get some more seats would be good too, to expand it and then make some of the concessions and things a little bit more upgraded, because they did a great job on Assembly Hall. The renovation there is fantastic, what they did to the inside. If you said that's our biggest need right now, the infrastructure at Memorial Stadium isn't where it needs to be. And Cignetti's going to bring in the revenue that's going to be able to pay for these repairs and everything to be made to the stadium as well. People are wanting to see more modern premium seating options. As you go around the modern stadiums, you go right up the road to Lucas Oil Stadium. Yeah, there's a lot more suites there. The seats are just a lot better. I mean, even though a lot of college football stadiums still have like the regular bleachers, but just having some suites. Indiana has some suites like down on the field. So IU Athletics surveyed fans more than a year ago on concepts for renovating Memorial Stadium. With that data in hand, it now seems that we're at a confluence of efforts to keep Cignetti in Bloomington and the facility upgrades tied to the football program. They got to get it done. Whether the upgrades are tied to the new contract for Cignetti or not. And I wonder if Cignetti will, he wants to see this, turn into a top level program. And we all want to see that. I love to tied to the new contract, blah, 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 multifaceted. Okay. So there you go. Scott Dolson, he is going to do everything he can. And I watched the interview with him to upgrade the football facility. And he's already upgraded the coach. We just have to do what we have to do to keep this coach here. And now let's talk a little bit about some of the X's and O's from the game coming up. I have a clip lined up here of Joel Klatt. Yeah, they're going to have to double his contract. That's for sure.
Read that we thought that Indiana had been underrated by the committee. What do you think of what they did with the Hoosiers this week?
Yeah, it was quite an adjustment, wasn't it?
It was.
I mean, for really them and BYU, Rev, and we had argued, at least I had, that I thought that there was some brand bias in the first edition of the college football playoff rankings. That was corrected, it seems like. And what's fascinating to me is that I believe it was corrected based on outside sentiment rather than on-field play. And the reason I feel that way is because both BYU and Indiana probably played their worst games of the year last week, and BYU narrowly defeating Utah in a really emotionally charged game in Salt Lake. And then Indiana, kind of escaping Michigan with a win. And that's a Michigan team that has obviously struggled this year. And yet the committee still moved them up. So now you're sitting there, and last week I thought that Indiana was in a precarious spot.
So I'm going to show two different opinions here, and I had to go grab my notes. But the guys from the Big Ten, they seem to really think that Indiana, no matter what, as long as they play a decent game against Ohio State, that they are going to get in. I've been looking at this, and then there's another opinion out there that shows Indiana getting left out and 5 SEC teams getting in. And I'll show that clip in a minute. And that's where there will be like some judgment call where if Indiana lost by more than 20 points is what they were saying on this one thing, that they would get left out of the playoff. I don't know. I mean, it's just hard to know what they're going to make of this. I mean, I've seen teams really get screwed. It seems like when they had the 4 teams, it was just all perception. I mean, it was a lot perception, and it was like whatever they want to believe the perception is, because the perception is if Alabama loses to a team, the perception is that team must be really good. But the perception when you're in Indiana, if you lose to anybody, it's the perception that that team must be really bad. I mean, on a different level. But so play the rest of this clip right here, but this and then we'll play from the other side, because Georgia fans, Tennessee fans, because Georgia and Tennessee play this week. So they are really complaining like we deserve to be in over Indiana, because Indiana's schedule so far, Indiana's schedule has been they have the 68th hardest schedule right now from their first game till now, and the 27th hardest schedule from right now till the end of the year. So, I mean, and their overall schedule total is like in the 110s, I believe. But so was Michigan and Georgia last year. So Michigan and Georgia were ranked 1 and 2, and it was almost like a foregone conclusion that those teams were going to play in the national championship game, even though they played weak teams, and they did exactly what Indiana's doing this year, and that was just beat the crap out of all of the teams they played. I mean, that's one way that, like, people used to say that's what an elite team was you could just go out there and really shellac teams that weren't very good. So it's very, very interesting how this is all going to shake out with the college football playoff. Let's get the rest of the clip up here of
whether they would get in with a loss. And I thought that they would be a bubble team even with one loss. Now I feel differently about that. As long as the committee stays consistent based on the way that they rank teams this week, I think that Indiana as an 11-1 would be probably safely in the playoff based on where they're starting right now. And obviously, if they win out, then they would have a chance to win the Big Ten and get in automatically.
I'm with you. I think they created a buffer zone for them, which is great. I think they need to be competitive with Ohio State. Clearly, you don't have to win the game. If you win the game, you're in an incredible position.
Exactly.
And then you just need to take care of business against Purdue, and then it feels like they'd be in the college football playoff. Speaking of Purdue, you saw them against Ohio State. Again, it's not the greatest competition last week. It's been a rough year for the Boilers. But what did you learn about the Buckeyes? I mean, every time you see a team in person, I'm guessing you see something a little bit different or a little new. Was there something that stood out there?
Yes. I mean, always with them. And one of the things that I notice with them is that they are more adept and or I should say adaptable this year. And I think that's because Ryan is not calling plays. In the past, they kind of were what they were on both sides of the ball the entire year. And this year, I have seen them change and adapt. And based on the way that the season has gone, I think that the offense looks a little different now than it did prior to the Oregon game. The defense looks a little bit different now than it did after the Oregon game. And because of that, I'm just reminded that Ryan made the decision to step away from play calling duties so he could be a true CEO. So what's fascinating for me, because Rev, you know, like, how many years have I been doing this? 10 years with Gus now, 8 years in the Big Ten. And we've covered a lot of Ohio State,
Yes.
a lot of Ohio State. And this is the first time that I noticed that.
All right. I wanted to let that play out a little bit, him talking about Ohio State, because that was one of the big things. Ryan Day, I saw an article this week about, him not calling the plays. Chip Kelly calls all of their plays. It's allowed Ohio State to be a little bit more creative. I don't watch all their games. So, there's only so many hours in the week, but I will say, and I've said it on this channel many times, they don't have the pass rush that Michigan has. They have, I think, better corners or just as good corners and safeties, but I don't think they have as good of an interior defensive line as what Michigan did. They really stopped Indiana's running game, and that's where they kind of stymied them. But here is one from the other side. This was on CBS Sports, and I saw this earlier, and this is where she has Indiana left out, and we'll just let this play here.
Believe either. If they do not keep this within a...
Where are the Hoosiers? Where's Coach Cignetti?
The Hoosiers are not here, and this is because I don't believe, and odds makers seem to not believe either, if they do not keep this within a 20-point loss. This is not a good loss for Indiana. I don't think they feel obligated to put them in this playoff, because you saw it with Michigan, which is one of the better teams they played. They barely beat Michigan. So if that's the case, then on top of that, you get smacked down by Ohio State. Do we really need to see you in this playoff? So they're projecting 3.5 teams for the Big Ten. They're projecting 4.5 teams for the SEC. So between the Big Ten and the SEC, one of those will become a whole number. And for me right now,
All right. So you can see there is a scenario where Indiana could be 11-1. And that's kind of a scary like razor's edge scenario that they're putting out there, saying that it would go by, how it's going to be, how they look. Now, I think the Ohio State game is going to go. I think one team is going to get out to a big lead, then the other team's going to come back. And even in years past, like Ohio State's gotten out to a lead on Indiana and Indiana's come back. I don't see them losing by like 20 points or more. How she had Indiana left out unless they lost the game by more than 20 points. But I see that the probability of Indiana losing this game by more than 20 points is like 1 in 1,000. I mean, I just don't see them and Cignetti going out there and just getting blown out in a game. I just don't see it. But I actually think Indiana's going to get it done against Ohio State. I think it's going to be a close game, and it's just going to boil down. And we got good news. So Price and Ellison, and they took some big shots in the game last week, and they're both back on the field, and they should be back to play against Ohio State. They've been at practice. Indiana is a 9.5 point underdog right now to Ohio State. So I'm telling you, I'm taking this on BetUS. I am taking the Hoosiers to at least cover. And actually, I'm going to line up a 3-way parlay because I believe Curtis Rourke's going to throw for over 300 yards in this game. I think Indiana's going to win this game, and I think Indiana's going to cover the spread on this game. So it's a good time to clean up if you want to put some money down on this. And here's one other thing. So, I mean, everybody's saying how and Indiana's schedule has been weak. But one thing you could say, I mean, Washington and Michigan, they beat both of those teams. Both of those teams played in the national championship game last year and are both in the Big Ten this year. I mean, there's no way, you can further, these schedules are made, out ahead of time. So I guess my point is, it's like, there's no way, like the cards and everything just fell where it was. It was the perfect situation for Cignetti to come in. Yeah. Did he line up some weak teams because he's coming into a new program and a new team? So he did line up a lot of home games and some weak teams in the early going, but the rest of the Big Ten schedule, I mean, that could have been really hard. Jim Harbaugh could have not cheated at Michigan and he could have stayed there, and that could have been an even harder game, and they could have lost to Michigan. Or Kalen DeBoer could be at Washington still, and they could have lost to Washington, and that could have been a totally different game. And there's just no way to predict this type of stuff. So in that way, I mean, I just don't think Indiana needs to be, they're going to be punished because of their Big Ten schedule. I mean, a lot of these teams they added, so it is what it is. Michigan State has been down for some years too, and they played them. But some teams like Nebraska, they were scheduled to look like a better team than they were, and now they've looked like hot garbage for a little bit here. So it's tough. It's tough. And that is about. And I watched a video about Curtis Rourke that was really interesting that Scott Fisher made. I will put it in the description down below, but he's been making a couple of videos, but it talked about his history. A lot of stuff I really didn't know about him. His older brother that played in the Canadian Football League, his family really made a lot of sacrifices to let them be football players in the United States because they lived in Canada and they moved to like Alabama to be in a more football centric place. So just really interesting. If you check out that video by Scott Fisher, I thought it really was about Curtis Rourke and just his story, and he was always in his brother's shadow his entire life. And just, that really you can kind of see why it's so great for him to have his time in the spotlight now after he's just been working at this for so long. And it's just great to finally see somebody get their due. But Indiana plays South Carolina in basketball tomorrow at 3:00. That's going to be on Peacock. Let me run this banner here. And South Carolina is going to be a really physical team. So I have, see where I have some of their statistics here or not. But their style of play, I don't have the statistics. Thanks, Hillbilly Monkey. These live stream videos, I'm never ready. But South Carolina's style of play is somewhat similar to Indiana's. They play a lot on the inside. They don't shoot that many threes. They rebound the hell out of the ball. So this is going to be a toughness inside game. Indiana's going to have to really be ready for this. They're not a team that's going to blow them away on threes, but they are a physical inside team. I watched some of the highlights and I watched part of a game that South Carolina played in. And yeah, that's just what I saw. And I got a clip here of Robbie Hummel talking about what Indiana has to do in this game. And look, Indiana's ranked like 40 in KenPom right now. And I believe the South Carolina team is ranked like in the 50s. So it's not like these two teams are close in KenPom rankings. And Indiana really has to prove it to get up into the top 20 in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency in the KenPom rankings. Look, I know, and I hate this stuff. I hate the net, and I hate how they pick the tournament. But all this stuff is what really matters when they boil it down to who's getting into the tournament and who's not. It's how you perform against the teams. It goes by this. It's like if you're here and the team you're playing is under you and you underperform, you're like losing. Even though you win that game, you're almost like losing ground because the net will say, well, you should beat that team by 20 points. And I know they beat the last team by 20, 30 points in the second half, even though I didn't talk about that. But this is critical to these games. And they got a lot of low-level teams coming in over these next couple months. So beating South Carolina and beating them in the rebounding, like rebounding has to be critical for this team. You would think, and I want to see really Miles Rice play. He's got to show up and he's got to show out because he just cannot have a game where he doesn't shoot any in the first half like he did in the last game. And you can tell Miles Rice when he's out there, he looks a little bit like he's trying to figure out what Mike Woodson wants him to do out there. If he wants him to shoot the ball, if he wants him to, facilitate, get into the pick and roll, or where to set up the offense at. You can tell like Trey Galloway when he's got the ball in his hands. Sorry. I've still had a lot of free hot dogs left over. So, boy, it was another hot dog lunch today. So yeah, Trey Galloway, when he's got the ball in his hands, he does look a lot more confident. But Miles Rice is going to be the guy. Him and Carlisle, to me, really have to be the guys. And I could see Galloway handling the ball a little bit here and there. I don't think that's a completely awful thing because Galloway is one of our best passers, the best passer on our team. I think he had crazy amount of assists in that last game. And here is Robbie Hummel talking about South Carolina here and what we have to expect. This is a big game for Indiana. It really is because it's the first real tester before we go to the tournament next week in the battle for Atlantis.
Shooting a pretty good percentage of basketball's opening day. Both these teams like to do their damage from inside the arc. Indiana shooting a pretty good percentage from three, but not shooting a high volume, whereas South Carolina on the year has not been a good shooting team, but certainly their effort on the offensive glass much better after a disappointing performance against North Florida. The job they did against South Carolina State, much more of what we're expecting to see from them this season. The Hoosiers at times have been inconsistent at closing down the defensive glass, and it is going to be imperative for them to rebound the basketball because South Carolina is physical, they're athletic, and they are going to crash the offensive glass. Something to watch for in this game, though, is certainly two sophomores that have broken out in big ways in their sophomore campaigns. Colin Murray-Boyle is looked at as someone that could easily be a first-round pick in this year's NBA draft. He went for 19 points and a career-high 16 rebounds in the win against South Carolina State. And then Mackenzie Mbako has gotten off to a phenomenal start to his sophomore campaign. 24 points a game, 8 rebounds, which I know Indiana fans love to see. He's been aggressive getting there. He's used his jump shot, but he's also done a great job of getting to the rim and making things happen with his physicality. He's shooting a ridiculous 74% from the field, 66% from three. Those two sophomores certainly guys to watch in what should be a absolutely raucous environment at Assembly Hall on Saturday.
All right, so there you have it. It is going to be the first like real big game of the year. And all I want to see, and I know in the last video, I ripped on Mbako a little bit. He is, of all those guys, I think that needed to be ripped on. He probably needed it the least because he has made some great strides defensively. He has made like a nice steal in the first game. He's gotten to the rim a little bit more, taking guys off the dribble, whether that's just because, he's being matched up against a smaller guy. But Mbako, physically, he has rebounded the ball. He's one of the guys that is like crashing the boards on the offensive glass. But that's what Indiana needs to do overall. You got Umar Ballo, Mbako, and Renew. You guys have got to get offensive rebounds. Like, I don't know. And I know last year, Mike Woodson said he doesn't like guys to stay in to rebound offensively. He wants two guys to run back. Well, the coach, you have to identify who those two guys are going to be. Because if you leave it up to the players, thinking like, oh, two guys always have to, be getting back on defense, then they're going to choose who the two guys are, right? I mean, they're going to be, oh, I'm standing back. Oh, he's standing back too, right? So, it's just two, and before you know it, it's like you really got like only two guys rebounding, or a lot of times only one guy going after a rebound on the offensive glass, because second chance points will kill you against a team like this. If they're going to be hitting the glass like that, it's going to be tough. Yeah, so I want to read a few of the comments here because I saw somebody saying like, when can you get tickets for the college football playoff coming up on StubHub? I've seen the tickets for sale on StubHub that you can buy a preliminary like first round ticket to the college football playoff. Just if you look on StubHub, even if you type in Indiana Hoosiers football, normally there's like a gray area. Sometimes they'll have season tickets on there, and I've been seeing college football playoff tickets down at the bottom. Yeah, look at the Indy 500. Yeah, Lucas Oil. I mean, that's my favorite stadium to go to. So oh, here we go. We got the answer to, all right, Purdue, Walters at Purdue, and Deshaun Foster at UCLA. They're the only head coaches paid less than Cignetti. So, yeah, he is the 15th highest paid coach in the Notre Dame. They love to play losers so they can run up the score. I bet Penn State is almost like halfway wishing that they never would have joined the Big Ten. They'd be in their own category and their own thing right now. And They could pick whatever teams they want to play. But thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Indiana Sports Connection. Hope the Hoosiers get it done. Thank you so much for being here. And they need to lock up Cignetti, and I'll be making some videos after the Indiana game and then making some more videos looking at the football game in Ohio State and how that's all going to pan out, because this is the biggest game in Indiana history. I think they have as good a chance as anybody to beat Ohio State, although I feel like I'm the only one that really thinks that. But thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, stay classy out there, Hoosier fans.